And today we're going to have a good program in our international webinar in celebration of 150 years of Mahatma Gandhi. And we fortunately have one eminent speaker, Dr. Arun P. Manoharan, from the Department of Public Administration, Public Policy and Public Affairs, University of Massachusetts, Boston, USA. And our speaker will speak on Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King, socio-political inclusion. I therefore request each and every participant to carefully listen to the speech of our speaker and then try to understand. Of course, you might have understood, but to have better understanding of this Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King in relation with reference to socio-economic, socio-political inclusion. Sorry, and I once again welcome all the participants. And today we are very fortunate to have in our midst our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Tiara Simbasigurao, and our Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor J.K. Patnaik. And now I call upon our Vice Chancellor to welcome our speaker and other participants.
Good morning, Arun. I call good morning because you are from a place where it's a morning time now. And good evening to all the participants. I thank you very much as a Vice Chancellor. It's my pleasure to invite you for giving a webinar in our university. And I was really wondered, the topic which you selected has got a very great significance. I am not a public administrative man or social science person, but I'm a science man. But still, I had a comparison of the two great leaders, Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King. Both were actually civil leaders and led the movement very great with the great laurels. And finally, they were assassinated by some people, both of them. And this comparison, actually, I could understand such a great choice of your topic for discussing the philosophy of social movements. These two great leaders. It was really, I'm a science man. What I'm talking is, I don't know whether it makes sense or not. But it was an interesting topic, and both the topic is very good. And you can understand because the Martin Luther King has a great following in America, particularly in the southern part of America, Georgia, and the place where actually the freedom movement of Martin Luther King. I used to hear about him very long, and it's a place where the freedom movement has taken place in the US. And Mahatma Gandhi was known to the whole world as a peace leader, peace-loving leader. And both have led the freedom movement in such a way that both had a very good comparison in US and also in India. And unfortunately, the coincidence has continued even for their life end also. Both were killed in a way actually which almost similar to them. This is what actually a comparison which I observed from my side. I'm a science observation is only to a limited extent. And the topic is very good, and I was very eager to listen. That's why I'm joining for this meeting, and also I'm also joining with all the participants to eagerly to listen your lecture. Thank you very much once again. And I'm very happy to know that you are from PhD College of Technology and alumni of that PhD college, and now you are in social science in America. And I'm very happy to say that last year I visited your institute, PhD Technology, as NAC assessor and as peer committee chairman. Last year I was there in Coimbatore in your institute. So I'm peer committee chairman, NAC peer committee inspection chairman in the last year to your college. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sambasivarao. It's really nice to know that you've visited PSG Tech. Thank you, Dean, and thank you, Professor Srinivas. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you to Dean.
Yeah.
Now, may I call upon my esteemed colleagues, Professor Srinivas Pathi, to introduce our speaker to the participants. Please take your time.
Thank you, Professor Lalin Truanga. It's a great pleasure that I introduce to all the participants and my friends here in Mizoram University, Dr. Arun P. Manoharan, a Bachelor of Engineering, Mechanical Engineering, then Master of Public Administration from Kansas, then PhD in Public Administration from Newark. Areas of interest of Dr. Arun include strategic planning, e-governance, information management and technology, public policy, public management, and of course, comparative public administration, his core area of interest. Currently, he is the director of Global Comparative Administration Program, Department of Public Policy and Public Affairs, University of Massachusetts, Boston, USA. And besides USA, he has got a number of projects worldwide. A few of them are in Czech Republic, Bulgaria, and South Africa, from which the Gandhi link also come. India, South Africa, Gandhi link. And he is very active in American Society of Public Administration, ASPA. He is the chair of section on public performance management. He is a member of section on international and comparative administration, SICA, from which we had the first link when he asked for something. Then, as a prolific writer, Dr. Arun has written a number of books and book chapters, articles. A few I can quote, like Government and Websites, a Public Solutions Handbook, 2014. Then another, Innovative Perspectives on Public Administration in the Digital Age, 2019. And today's topic, Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King, socio-political inclusion, is the area on which both of us discussed that he should talk. But while giving his consent, he was telling, can I talk about sustainable development, social inclusion, the way Gandhi and Martin Luther King they have interacted in this present context also, how people follow them and related issues. I said, still better, because we wanted one and you are giving many. So nice of you. So with these few words, I simply say on my personal behalf, on behalf of my Vice Chancellor, my Dean School of Social Sciences, and all the participants, we are so much eager to listen to you, Dr. Arun. So now the time is yours. Maybe you put 40 minutes of talk, then few minutes of question and answer. Now time is yours, Dr. Arun. Please.
Uh, Thank you, Professor Srinivas, for this introduction. I really appreciate you inviting me. Am I audible? Is it clear? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you again, everybody, for joining this session today. Um, Again, I have a technical background. I have my bachelor's in engineering from PSG College. So my knowledge about Mahatma Gandhi, unfortunately, is primarily from what I learned in schools. And really, we don't talk about there's less interaction between humanities and engineering, right? We don't have much of humanities in the engineering part. So it was only in the US that I came and I've learned a lot more. So one thing is I did shift, because I was always interested in public policy, public administration. Never really got a chance to study that in India. But I came here after my engineering in India. I came here to do public administration masters, and then I did my PhD, and now I'm teaching public administration. So, and it is true that I've learned a lot about Mahatma Gandhi, and I do a lot of my research in public management. In public administration, you have public policy, public management. So mine is a lot in public management. And it was only through looking at management techniques and management skills that I went back to a lot of Gandhi's principles. Gandhi, the thing about Mahatma Gandhi is there's not been ever an individual who's had multiple impact in so many fields. And we primarily know Mahatma Gandhi as in terms of the non-violence and the freedom movement. He is rightly considered the father of the nation. But then a lot of his principles can also be applied in so many different aspects. That's why, I requested Professor Srinivas if I can also just briefly touch upon the other aspects. Now, in a lot of ways, what I probably talked today about Mahatma Gandhi is not new to a lot of participants, right? But why we want to talk to him, of course, it is his 150th birth anniversary. But it is also important that we look back to Mahatma Gandhi's principles in today's times. I mean, we are living in the COVID era, right? Which again came about because of the exploitation of natural resources, which he rightly criticized way back about 100 years back. And we are also so in this age of industrialization, which he rightly cautioned about, and and we are also in this age of protests, in the United States and across the world. In spite of the teachings and the life of Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King and Nelson Mandela, sometimes we feel that history is being repeated. So I think it's a good time to actually go back. And so that's why I think I really welcome this opportunity. And I look forward to this discussion because, as you said, a lot of these things we probably know. So just a quick just some background information about Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. He was an Indian lawyer. He was an anti-colonial nationalist who really, who's known for having employed non-violent resistance to lead the successful campaign for India's independence from the British rule. The thing is, a lot of what is really striking about Mahatma Gandhi is a lot of his principles he actually learned during his lifetime. So his whole perspectives evolved because of his travel and because of his experiences. And and as we know, the name Mahatma it means the great soul. It was first given to him, applied to him in 1914 in South Africa. And we have October 2nd, which is commemorated as Gandhi Jayanti. And internationally, it is known as the International Day of Nonviolence, right? So he's rightly considered the father of the nation. So now we primarily look at his life coming from South Africa, but then sometimes it's just important to look at his time in South Africa. He spent more than 2 decades in South Africa, and that is where he developed his political views, ethics, and politics. It's interesting. So, of course, we are going to talk about his influence on Martin Luther King, but he also influenced a great personality in South Africa, right? Nelson Mandela. And I did my master's internship. So after my master's here, I did an internship in Cape Town in South Africa, 3-month internship. And during that internship, I had, the host over there took me and the other students who were interning to visit Robben Island. Robben Island is where Nelson Mandela was imprisoned, and I saw the prison. And so it is, when you go and see all these, it's really striking as to how the struggles that many countries or many populations had to go through, and how these thoughts have influenced people worldwide, right? So when Mahatma Gandhi came to South Africa, he faced discrimination all along, right? That's where actually his ideals developed. He faced discrimination because of the skin color, because of the heritage, and he was not, of course, the very rather infamous incident, the train incident, where he was not allowed to sit with the European passengers, and he was told to sit on the floor, and then he was thrown out of the train in Pietermaritzburg. And then there was another incident where the magistrate of Durban court ordered Gandhi to remove his turban. So these were many incidents that really shaped his perspectives of populations and freedom, of the necessity of freedom. And so he also, there are a lot of achievements that can be really accredited to him. He founded the Natal Indian Congress in the year 1894, and he also published his newspaper called the Indian Opinion. And he published it. What's really striking, and I've never actually learned this in India, is that it is probably the first multilingual paper published in the whole world. It was published in English. It was published in Swahili. I think it was published in Hindi and Tamil. It was 4 languages that it was published. So So another thing, again, I look at it from a management, the thing again, because of my background, because of my research interest also in public management, I'm just so tempted to go into his management principles and impact, because communication, I mean, if you think of it, even today, organizations and individuals don't recognize the importance of communication. But then, think of how Mahatma Gandhi was able to influence the whole population, probably the whole world. Again, why? Because of communication, right? He made sure that he wrote down his thoughts, and his thoughts were very clear, to the point. And very simple. There was and very clear messages that was effectively communicated. And again, if you research further, it also talks about the importance of staffing, right? Not many of us probably have studied that in India, but he had a very good staff member. His name was Mahadev Desai, and it was this person who was really responsible for getting the ideas of Mahatma Gandhi across the country. So again, when I think of management, that's my long-term goal, is to write a book on Mahatma Gandhi's influence on management, communication, and the importance of staffing, right? So again, all this came from his experiences there. So the two main contribution that he's known for is nonviolence and civil disobedience, right? And this whole idea of nonviolence, it comes from this concept of satyagraha. Satyagraha means satya is truth, and then graha is holding on to truth. So it is in seeking the truth, that's the ultimate goal, right? Holding on to the truth, seeking the truth is the ultimate goal, and the truth should be the moral, I guess, the moral arc. That should be the guiding principle in anything. I think this is what is important about the nonviolent movement. And he made a point that, what really struck Martin Luther King, Martin Luther King initially was not very familiar with Gandhi's thoughts, and it was one of his friends who introduced him to Gandhi's thoughts. And what really struck with him is that the idea of non-violence and the civil disobedience, Mahatma Gandhi was able to make this distinction between passive resistance and civil disobedience, right? I mean, sometimes civil disobedience or non-cooperation might be thought of as a weakness. It's really not a weakness, because there's a distinction between civil disobedience and passive resistance. Passive resistance means that you just can't do anything. You're weak to resist. Whereas civil disobedience, whereas nonviolent resistance is actually resistance through a nonviolent means. So it does not mean that you're weak. It just means that you're resisting non-violently. So that is what really struck Martin Luther King when he read and came to know more about Mahatma Gandhi. So, rightly, I think both of them, Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King, are probably considered as the century's most important personalities in terms of freedom struggle. And I think one more, they lived as remarkable ethical can actually be applied to both of them, right? And here I want to actually, also draw a local comparison. Both of them were influenced by this author called Henry Thoreau. And we probably don't read a lot about Henry Thoreau in schools or mainstream. And Henry Thoreau was actually one of the, he was an American poet, he was an American essayist or philosopher, and he grew up in a place called Concord. See, I live outskirts of Boston, and Concord is about 40 minutes from where I live. And he was known for his writings on natural history and philosophy. And he talks about he published a book called he kind of spent a lot of his time in nature. It was a pond called the Walden Pond, and that's where he wrote his book Walden. And here he talks about civil disobedience, because he talks about he was not supporting the U.S. government's war against Mexico, and so he refused to pay taxes, right? So he basically brought in this concept of civil disobedience. But again, this concept is not new, because if you go back in history, there were a lot of instances of civil disobedience. And you have even America, the the early settlers in the United States, they did not want to pay taxes to the British. So that's again civil disobedience, and that's what was highlighted by Henry Thoreau. But what is different about Gandhi is he has used civil disobedience for the community. He has used civil disobedience as a tool for social change, right? Because when you talk of Henry Thoreau, it's a very local phenomenon, and of course you had the U.S. The War of Independence, which again was in Boston area. But then Gandhi effectively used this. He used this tool for social change. And what is remarkable about Mahatma Gandhi, and that what Martin Luther King really appreciated, is the tools of nonviolence, and I think many of you would agree, the tools that he used, nonviolence and civil disobedience, and his principles towards inclusion and social change and sustainable development, have an impact beyond the immediate goal. The immediate goal was the freedom of India, but they still have an impact today, right? So it is a long term, it's a sustainable solution. That's what really impressed Martin Luther King. So Martin Luther King, again, so any questions so far?
Yeah. Arun, am I audible? Yeah, the
Yes,
point
yes.
is, yeah, when you complete your presentation, at that point, we will have one by one question, 2, 3, 4, you can respond to. Is it okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Please continue.
So, so how does, what are the points of, I guess, convergence or divergence in terms of Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King? Now, the first thing is both Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King, their lives and works were, they really had, they had a lot of connection to religion, right? And they often referred to God in many of their work, and that was really distinct. And I think that is one thing that Mahatma Gandhi, impacted Martin Luther King, because his constant reference to God and how he articulates satyagraha and ahimsa, was quite. It had a very positive impact on Martin Luther King. And the second way is how Mahatma Gandhi, he really used nonviolence as a tool to create change, but not only in the society, but also the way of life that goes beyond the resistance, right? And the social conditions of Gandhi, they clearly show that he had a long-term vision. It's not just the immediate mission, but the long-term vision. And so these are some of the ways that he impacted Martin Luther King. But then there's also there is also other aspects. One is sustainable development. And today, we are all talking about sustainable development. The UN has come up with the sustainable development model, which basically means that, you have to develop in such a way that you don't exploit the resources. And this was, again, this was also rightly pointed out by Mahatma Gandhi way back, because he rightly pointed out that it was the British, because of the material goals of one country, so much resources had to be used. And what if a country like India also pursues this path, right? So so that is what the UN and other organizations are looking at right now. In terms of sustainable development, they have the sustainable development goals, and the UN Secretary General also referred to Mahatma Gandhi's principles. And if you look at some of the specific aspects of sustainable development, it's interesting how he has actually given very specific thoughts on various aspects of sustainable development. For example, he's actually given a thought about air pollution. Way back in 1913, for him it was important that modern civilization have access to clean air, and not put a cost on clean air. He may at that time, this was a time when I guess there was a lot of industrial development across the world, and you had the industrial revolution in the Western world, and he was against this concept of urbanization, because urbanization for him, it's like uprooting of people, right? Uprooting of population. For centuries, we've been living in I guess, in a rural setting. And what happens is, in a rural setting, everybody is dependent on the agriculture and what is grown in the local area. There was less transportation of food. I mean, today we eat food which is transported from across the world. I mean, just right from the morning to the night. Think of all the foods that we have. Whereas he was more focused on how do you grow, and how do you use resources that are local, right? That way you don't exploit the earth. That way you don't have to transport. When you transport, you have to spend a lot of time preserving. It's not fresh. So he focused on local, and so he was really against this whole exploitation and this shift towards urban development, because it really basically uprooted people. When you were in a rural setting, traditionally you were actually you knew everybody in the area, right? There was a certain level of trust, that whole, probably the village atmosphere that many of us might be familiar with. But then when you come to the city, what happens is there is a consumption mentality. You become very materialistic, because first of all, you don't know who your neighbors are. You want to consume as much as possible. So this is what he propagated against. There is also exploitation, child labor and exploitation of labor. And so he really pointed out about the dangers of industrialization. So that's why we are going back now. And not only that, the exploitation of resources. We have exploited the resources. That is where we are at the state right now, right, with COVID. And maybe this is a good time to look back at some of his principles. So that is, again, briefly in terms of sustainable development. Then a lot of another aspect that really struck me was his leadership qualities, right? So this is where I think we need to go beyond what we talk about just in terms of civil disobedience and non-violence, which are very important topics, but we mostly focus on that, but we don't think of, on a day-to-day basis, what he has done, right? I teach strategic planning, and I feel that he has really strategized the way to, achieving independence was a great strategy in terms, of communicating his ideas, in terms of his interaction with the British, in terms of his interaction with his own party members. And he's really the person who strengthened the Indian National Congress, right? So not only is he a great communicator, orator, but he's also a very good organization person. And what is very important is delegation. This is a topic I teach. I mean, he's rightly delegated the right tasks to people. I mean, he had this whole, he had the team, he had Jawaharlal Nehru, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, and he had Rajaji, Rajagopalachari. So he knew whom to delegate what tasks. So I think that's a great initiative. So now I'm just going into the management aspect. Leadership. I think leadership is really important because, I teach leadership. So leadership is, so what is leadership? Leadership is about the power to influence an individual to make them do what you want, right? The power of A to influence B is what is leadership. And we talk about different theories of leadership: transactional leadership, transformational leadership. Transactional leadership is the leadership which is based on transactions, which is based on interactions and transactions. And then there is transformational leadership, which is based on how you can transform the organization by transforming the whole culture. And then there's a concept of servant leadership. Servant leadership means that you are leading in terms of service. You're really serving the employees. So when I teach this, I give different examples to students about who fits into transactional, who fits into transformative, who fits into servant leadership. But Mahatma Gandhi fits into all levels. That's what is really remarkable, because transactional leadership, I mean, he really interacted very effectively with the British, the authority, with his, with people in the Congress, with his organization, with his followers, with probably some of the rebels. And he was able to convince those who were not buying the idea of civil disobedience and nonviolence, right? He was able to convince them. That's again transactional leadership. He was able to do that in South Africa, where he was able to bring in, and for a person to go from India to South Africa and start the Natal Congress was not an easy task. Again, it's interaction and transaction. For him to start the Indian Opinion, the newspaper there, again, interaction, transaction, so transactional leadership. Then transformational leadership. He really transformed the nature of the Congress. The Congress was a bit of an elitist party till he took over, and he made it democratic. He brought in people from all sections of the society. He really pushed for women upliftment, right? So transformational leadership is about transforming the nature, the culture of the organization, and that's where he excelled, right? And it was his transformational leadership that effectively pushed towards the independence of India. And in servant leadership, so servant leadership is about serving, and see, one thing about Mahatma Gandhi as a leader is he was really humble. I mean, it's service. So he is very famous for his quote, losing yourself, the best way of public service, or losing yourself, and I'm not able to recollect it, but there's a quote that says that you should lose yourself in the service of society, right? That gives you the ultimate satisfaction. So when you're a leader, it's not about authority, but it's about being this whole having the charisma to make your followers do what you want to do, right? Being a beloved leader. I think that's what really stands out. So he really fits in all these aspects, and also, we've probably heard of this theory X, theory Y, management style. So theory X is a manager who thinks that individuals have to be pushed to work. The individuals can only be made to work by punishment, by coercion. Whereas theory Y manager is somebody who thinks that work is natural, who lets you be, who doesn't want to micromanage you. And this is exactly what Mahatma Gandhi was. I mean, he did not micromanage. He assigned tasks. And I mean, the art of, if you want to learn the art of delegation, I think you should just look at what Mahatma Gandhi did. I mean, on a day-to-day life, how, if you look at his daily life, but then if you look at the impact that he's had, it's all about delegation, right? So I think it's just great to go beyond. I mean, definitely the civil disobedience and the nonviolence is very important. But then if you can go beyond that and just see all the daily management principles, lifelong learning is I think another lesson that we can learn from him. He was always constantly innovating. He was always constantly learning. And today, lifelong learning is very important because we all have to be, there's this whole concept of upskilling. So we all have to continuously skill ourselves. And now with this whole shift to digital, this is exactly where, see what you see here. My university has gone online, so I'm going to be teaching like this for the rest of the semester, maybe the whole year. And so this has also opened up new potential for lifelong learning for people across all ages, across all parts of the world, right? So that's something. Then perseverance. If this is one person who has brought about so much changes because of perseverance, right? Because of constantly having the faith, and he never gave up, and that's something that we can learn from an organization perspective. And ethics is really important. That's another aspect of his life. Ethical leadership, again, it goes back to the leadership aspect. So definitely he has had a great influence. He's really led by example. That's the great aspect. And in terms of strategic planning, you can say that he was a wonderful strategist. And what really struck me and was that his communication, right? His whole PR, public relations aspect and communication. And I should admit that, we don't focus much. We don't teach about communications. We don't focus on communication, but he made sure that his thoughts were rightly communicated. Because what is the point when you have these thoughts and not communicated, right? He made sure that, and again, as I said before, it is because of having a good staff member, Mahadev Desai, who was a great staffing. Today organizations are involving, I mean, we talk about staffing, but Mahatma Gandhi had an effective staff member, right? So, and learning from mistakes, I guess the humble approach, being flexible and learning from mistakes was something that we can definitely follow from Mahatma Gandhi, because he was always trying different things. He never gave up. He was learning new, I guess, trying to learn new ways of approaching the goal that he had. And what is really important from all this is that the values that he developed, right? He had these values. He developed a value system that he always stuck to, right? The value of empowerment, the value of enabling, the value of ahimsa and non-violent means, right? He is, he really stuck to that. He never gave up on those values, and so these are some many of the aspects that we can talk about. uh, it is unfortunate, of course, that after independence, and he was not. We didn't see a lot of what he could have been capable of, and today there's a lot of, I guess, information and probably disinformation, misinformation about him, what he has contributed. But really, it's difficult to find one person who has impacted a country or probably the world in so many aspects, right? So yes, so I see half an hour, and yeah, I'm open to any questions.
Okay, I think now we'll have a question and answer. So one word from Dean, then we'll talk.
Okay, Dr. Arun, thank you very much for your lecture,
Okay.
your speech, and I hope our participants also enjoy your speech. Now, I'll call upon my esteemed colleagues, Professor Srinivas Pathi, to take questions to be answered by you. And after taking 2, 3, 4 questions at the maximum, then Pathi Saab himself will continue to take up this responsibility. Then afterwards, we will try to close our seminar.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Again, so we have got a lot of questions through chat, through question and answer, and through my email. So I will pick a few. Let's start from history. One question is, in Salt Satyagraha or Laban Satyagraha, as it is known in India, which of the management principles you think we can see? The Salt Satyagraha of Gandhi, where he asked people, they joined and they defied the British law of making salt by common people. So is that in management principle, or are there some management principles? What is your view? That's a question.
I again, sir, like I said, I think every aspect of his action has a management principle. This is a late finding from me because I grew up in India. I studied there. We study about Mahatma Gandhi as in terms of nonviolence and civil disobedience, which is again very important. But then, from my research, and then there's so much from a day-to-day basis. One thing is the Salt Satyagraha, the ability to communicate his idea, right? I mean, when trying to defy the British and try concept to followers and trying to get everybody to talk, right? That is definitely communication is a very important aspect. And in fact, of late, I've been looking at communication. So that's something that impressed, right? And then leadership by example. You are leading by example. You're a servant leader, right? You're not just saying, okay, why don't you all go and march up and do things. He just led by example. I think that is the greatest lesson that we can learn. I remember when I came here, there was one incident where I was a graduate assistant, and we were assigned to go and shift some benches and chairs, and I just went there and I was just standing there, not knowing. This is my first semester in the US, not knowing how to do it, and then suddenly the chair comes, and he just folds up his sleeves and he just starts doing things, and that really had an impact on me. So you just have to get down and start doing it.
Okay. So now the next one is, you talked of sustainable development. There is a
Yes.
question. The United Nations SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, how far Gandhian ideas and principles have influenced the SDGs of the present day UN system? Can there be some link?
No, absolutely. There is definitely a link because the the Secretary General of the UN has actually referenced Gandhi, and I think he also thanked Gandhi and India for the contribution that they have that has been made in terms of sustainable development. The UN has the Sustainable Development Goals, which, if we look at it. Uh, Trying to be not exploit resources. I think that is one principle. Trying to in terms of specific examples, trying to be you're trying to, not to exploit and not sustainable, right? And trying to be resilient. These are some of the aspects that the UN can apply, or they actually do apply, right? Because non-violence also means that it's not just about the physical violence, right? But it's also about violence from towards non-violence towards natural resources and conservation. I think that's important. It's not just, it's not just about non-violence to protect yourself, but I think non-violence, what he propagated is non-violence beyond achieving the independence, like non-violence on a daily basis, non-violence towards your resources, non-violence towards plants, towards animals. I think that is something that can be definitely applied in terms of sustainable development goals.
Okay, there is one question. In your view, what is the present status and future of Gandhian ideas for India and for the world we live in? The present status and the future.
I think we have to start looking at it from, Gandhi's contributions, not from a very specific point of view, but from an overall point of view. And then see, probably, studying from how his thoughts have evolved. And, I would say, okay, if you think of specific impact, definitely there are two things. Again, one is with all the social protests that have happened here, right, in the United States and across the world, the fight against inequality and the fight against non-inclusion. I think there's so much that we can learn. How do you, all the protests that have happened, and unfortunately, it has also led to, I guess, many deaths, many casualties. How do you resist? How do you resist authority through a non-violent means? I mean, again, non-violent does not mean that you're weak. I mean, non-violent, Gandhi makes a distinction, but really, I think that distinction is what Martin Luther King liked, the distinction between passive resistance and non-violent means. Passive resistance means that you really can't resist. You really don't have any means to resist. Whereas non-violent resistance is that you have the means to resist, but you're just resisting in a very non-violent way, right? So I think that's the main thing that we can take from that. And the values, sticking to the values. What are your values? What are your ultimate values, public values that you want to resist? Only then I think you can reach out. Many of the protests that we see, they've started out, they're not able to get the public support. Why? Because people don't understand, they're not able to understand why exactly are you doing this, right? I mean, they know it's against equality, but what is, what is a larger thing, and why do you protest the way you protest, right? Some of these protests have gone beyond. And another thing is how to use the system. See, we are in a different era than what Mahatma Gandhi was. I mean, there are a lot of different ways of protest today than earlier. Protest is not just about physical protest. There's also protests in other means, right? So, and today technology, we have technologies. You can how to use technology for protest. I mean, if Mahatma Gandhi was here today, I think he would have been the biggest social media influencer.
Okay, yeah. The next question related to this. There is one question. Do you think ethics and politics go together, or they are antithetical to each other? How can you look at ethics in politics or politics in ethics?
So ethics, I mean, politics is really about, it's a people, right? Politics is about, I study public administration. We look at politics in two different ways. One is we look at politics from politics administration dichotomy, and we don't want any politics involved in dichotomy in public administration. But then politics is nothing but people, right? Politics is your representatives. Politicians are people's, I mean, the elected officials are people's representatives. So politics is all about, when you say, oh, there's too much politics in the system, that because there's too much stakeholder involvement. There's so many thoughts. Sometimes you want that thoughts, right? And that ethics should be actually public ethics. That public ethics should be based on public values, So yes, very much, I think the public values is the connective link, right? Between ethics and politics. And when you think of ethics, there is so much ethics across the world. Different cultures have created their ethics. And so one thing that's where diversity comes into play. When I was reading about Mahatma Gandhi, he has been shaped by his influences in South Africa, where he probably learned about other cultures like the Christian faith, for example. And of course, he had British friends to whom, from which he learned about the Christian faith. But he also, he grew up a Hindu. He had very good friend as a Jain, and he had a very good friend, a Muslim. So he has had exposure to all this. So I think diversity can help you have a multifaceted view of ethics and the truth, right? You're just approaching it from a different angle. So how would I see it from a different region? So yeah, public values would be the connective link.
Okay, there is one question. Martin Luther King's legacy in America today, how to look at it? Today, how people or the present generation, they look at it. What is the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. today?
The legacy, Martin Luther King's legacy is very important today, because people are realizing that, fighting for injustice and fighting for, fighting for the downtrodden, it's not just a race thing. It's definitely connected to race when he was fighting, but it's also a social aspect, right? I mean, discrimination in terms of the class. When he actually, when Martin Luther King was assassinated, he had actually gone to a place, Kentucky, in the state of Kentucky, to fight against a system that is discriminating the sanitation workers. So if you just, I mean, his work is very important in terms of the race upliftment, but then if you have to take it out and apply it everywhere, but he wants a more, I guess, system that is not really discriminating against the oppressed class of society. Right? So it is very much, and going back, civil disobedience or non-violent means. It is sometimes just things go out of control, and it is important that we go back to how Martin Luther King made his stance. So yes, it is very important. But I guess people, we are in a, I guess we have a lot of information. We have so much information today. Sometimes some of these voices might get clouded by other voices, but it's important that we, in our education, give all well-rounded view of Martin Luther King and Mahatma Gandhi. Yes.
Yeah, there is one question. It is obvious. Your elections are around the corner. The Kamala Harris factor, maybe this related to this inclusion politics, inclusive politics. So how do you look at it? The Kamala Harris factor in American election. So does it link to the inclusive politics, or how do you look at a part of Indian diaspora in America?
I think the selection of Kamala Harris is definitely, it is, it sends a message out that the politics is changing, right? She's got Indian roots, she's got Jamaican roots, and she is, her husband is Caucasian. So, she really has, she's a new face, I think. It is going to be the new face of America. We are going to be seeing more of this. And, there has not been a lot of focus on that. And I'm glad that there has not been a lot of focus on that. But again, I hope that people go beyond that and then look at her achievements. I think she's got very good achievements. I mean, she's one person who has not really come because of, having connections or political connections. She's really come from the scratch. I think that is something we need to see. So apart from, being, having multiple roots, but she's also has a lot of achievement that comes into play. And it's interesting, she's actually from, her mom is from Chennai, where I grew up. So
okay, very good. So then there is one question, it's a global question regarding entire talk. Somebody says, what is the comparative position of socio-political inclusion in America and India today? How can you compare these two situations, American and Indian, in terms of socio-political inclusion? How do you look at it as an academic?
okay, so when you think of, in terms of today, when you think of it, there is definitely, see, both are democracies. A lot of parallels can be drawn. Both are large functioning democracies. right? And sometimes we have to also compare. We have to actually put America and India in one group and then compare with the rest of the world. Both are functioning democracies where all sections of the society have a means to democratically raise their voices and be part of the system. Uh, in the case of India, it is I guess it's a multilingual, it's a very pluralistic society. So, democracy is giving the opportunity, the mechanism for different voices to be raised. I think the political system might be one thing here, the defining factor. In India, we have multiple parties, whereas in America, there are primarily two political parties. So, multiple systems and the federalism could be the key.
Okay. Okay, we can continue, but I think still there are better times to come. We can have more time. So now one word from our dean, then we can go for formal vote of time. Is it okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Arun, for your lectures and then questions and answer. And out there, I think it's an early morning, but out here, it's already time to have our dinner. That's why our times are very dissimilar. And as the chairman of this program, I express my heartfelt thanks to all those panelists of participants in this webinar on Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King, socio-political inclusion. And I'll not take much time now. I'll call upon Professor Srinivas Pati to propose a vote of thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Lalin Truanga. So, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Sir, Professor K.R. Sambashivarao Garu, our Honorable Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor J.K. Patnaik, Dean, School of Social Sciences, Professor Lalin Truanga, our guest speaker, Dr. Arun P. Manoharan from University of Massachusetts, Boston, USA, my colleagues in Ek Bharat, Shresth Bharat team in Mizoram University, my other colleagues in the university, all the participants, our ICT team who have supported us all along. So on behalf of my university, I express my heartfelt gratitude and thanks to Dr. Arun, to all my friends in the university and the participants and the ICT team people for their kind cooperation, and also specifically to Dr. Arun, who agreed to a proposal that in America it's early morning, even though we are in evening, still he agreed. And whatever we demanded, this is the time, this is the date, he agreed so gladly. And today, I think we have come to the end of today's webinar, and this is not the end, but the beginning of our relationship. And I wish in future time, we'll have more occasions to discuss with other topics. So on behalf of the university, I again say a big thank you to all of you. Okay, goodbye. Namaskar.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me, and thank you for all the participants for your questions. Thank you for your engagement. I see that there's so many questions. You are definitely free to email me. I can share it's just my first name, arun.manohar@umb.edu. So please feel free to email me, and I look forward to continuing this collaboration and having more such sessions, and all the best.
Okay. Then thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, goodbye. Namaste.
Quickly send my email address.
Yeah. I will send. I will share with all the participants. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, no issue. Yeah. We got it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, bye.
I guess.
Let them read, note down, no?
No, already has given. Suraj has told to.
Let him do. We'll do so.
I sent it. Yeah, I sent it.
Yeah, we got it. Okay, thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Nice. Yeah, nice having you. Okay, bye. Yeah.
Into the total.
No, Suraj told.